but there's like 6 different DJs within one room, and you could just feel different stuff. Shampoo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think that's where what we lack in today's nightlife experiences.
I can't even believe you're saying that, because I've heard that from hundreds and hundreds of people, and it goes back to my initial comment.
Yeah.
That experience is what
it's getting boring.
That is coming back. That is coming back in a big way.
Okay, I'm reloaded.
Jeff London, DJ Jason Smith.
Here come the bang.
When the sun goes down, the music turns up. A whole new world opens up behind the velvet rope. Join us as we take you behind the scenes of the nightlife world.
Are you ready?
DJ Jason Smith, Jeff London. I'm the promoter. He's the DJ podcast, live from Boston, Massachusetts.
Jeff London.
You know what episode it is?
No, 37.
I think it's 38. We're 38. We're 38. What are you listening to?
Nothing, dude. My phone. Sorry, guys. My phone just like opened up by accident.
Episode 38. 38's our favorite number.
It is?
Yeah.
That's
What's your
awesome.
favorite number? Number 1. I'm number 1.
I don't have a fucking favorite number. Oh. I think 23.
What's your
shoe size? 9.5.
What's your password to
favorite color? Blue.
What's your password to your PIN number?
My PIN numbers?
That's your favorite.
Oh shit! Can we edit that out? I'm sorry.
Special show today.
Yeah, man. It's an exciting show.
Big interview. Steve Adelman.
Big one.
A new book coming out June 7th.
Well, tell them who, just
I'll give him a little intro
before a little intro, yeah.
I mean, Steve has been in the industry many decades. Has been through the Limelight era to the Avalanche eras. He started all the Avalanche, one in Boston, New York.
That's amazing.
Hollywood. So
he's probably got a lot of stories.
A lot of stories. We were very excited to have him on here. So I guess without further ado,
let's go.
Go to Steve. All right, special guest today on that show.
Yes.
Steve Adelman with a new book out, Nocturnal Admissions, behind the scenes at Tunnel, Limelight, Avalanche, and other legendary nightclubs. It's out June 7th, so almost a month from now.
Yeah.
Let me give you a little background on this legendary.
I mean, just describing what the book is about is just legendary in its own.
It is true. So widely recognized as the co-founder of Avalanche nightlife brand, Steve Adelman began his career in the early 90s, moving to New York City to become the director of the Roxy nightclub. 2 years later, he was tapped as director of the iconic Limelight, and then increased his role at Manhattan's 4 largest nightclubs, including the Tunnel and Palladium. In 97, Adelman launched Avalanche on Lansdowne Street in Boston, which quickly became a national success. Over the next 4 years, he led a team to develop 6 venues on the famed street, turning into the ultimate one-stop entertainment destination. That place was also the start of myself.
That's amazing.
Yeah, which is great. So we welcome on the show Mr. Steve Adelman. We appreciate you taking the time out today. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for the introduction.
So I guess we'll start.
You did a pretty good job, right?
Congrats on the book, first of all, and we're excited to read
Thanks.
it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the stories must be unbelievable. There's a very exciting book to come out for sure.
What caused you? What not caused you to? What? Why is the time did you pick to put out this book? And did you think?
Well, most people are surprised when I tell them I'm really a writer that got sidetracked in nightlife for like 30 years.
That's amazing.
So I've been writing for years. I have a manager right now in Hollywood who does my scripts, and I started writing down stories in probably the early 2000s, and I showed it to my agent at the time, and he said, "Oh my God, this is hilarious." These read like episodes of like Curb Your Enthusiasm on acid.
Right, I love that.
That's amazing.
I love it.
So he said, this is a book. You got to write this book. Well, that was in 2005. So it's taken me this long.
Oh, wow.
And, the pandemic slowdown helped. But I think about a year or two ago, I just wanted to go back to my writing. I mean, I've been in nightlife for 30 years. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the genesis of it. And probably my first book best to come out and write about something that I have some experience with.
Absolutely. We do actually a segment on the show where it's story time with Uncle Jeff, and I actually I omit the names, but I do tell stories.
I love that.
I
love that.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm doing a big book event in New York. I don't know if you know who Michael Musto is.
And, of course.
Some big Anthony Hayden guest and all these big people. And the theme of the book talk, it's to promote my book, but
sure.
is everybody's life story has a nightlife story.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
Sure, yeah,
I love that.
Right.
And Jason,
and by the way, I've already trademarked that as a podcast. So
I like that. I love that. So Jason, when he first started, he actually DJ'd over at the Limelight. I think we should start. Is that kind of where you started at the Limelight, or did you start before?
It was. I started originally. I had gotten involved in a nightclub in Boston in the late '80s, and randomly, actually, RuPaul did an event at that club.
What was the club called?
Hub Club.
Hub Club. Okay,
that's amazing.
Downtown.
Name. The names are just like those older club names are just so amazing.
Yeah. They don't make them like they don't make them like they used to, including the names.
Not exactly.
RuPaul actually recommended me for a job at the Roxy in New York. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Roxy in New York.
I was at the Roxy in New York right before they closed it. I was there for actually a DJ competition. And right after that was my first experience at the Limelight later that night.
So to show you how old I am, I launched the Roxy.
Wow.
And I had no idea what I was doing. And I sort of stepped into a scenario where people were, I was, sort of bestowed on me the director. So I just said yes to everything. Mm-hmm. And eventually a few things hit and, there you go. So I started there. And then 2 years later, they sort of pulled me over to Limelight. And that group had Limelight and then eventually bought the Tunnel, Palladium, and Club USA. Yeah. So I was there running four clubs.
I also did hear a story that used to go there early to Club USA and answer the phones. Is that the truth?
No.
No?
Wait. No. Let's clarify that.
Okay.
I was the only one that got up before 2:00 in the afternoon, including the receptionist. So when people called, I guess maybe I did pick up the phone a lot.
You just didn't realize you were doing it. Yeah.
So
it happened naturally.
How, that's how legends become, misinformed legends.
Right, of course. Now, when you went over there and it was all under Peter Gleason, right, at the time?
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Now, did you see his vision and how he ran those clubs and saw that vision and tried to divert it into how Avalon became about?
It's a great question. I learned a lot from Peter, and some lessons to learn. The first thing he'd always tell me was, I don't understand why people do bars or small nightclubs, because if you're successful, the capacity limits your success, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why his clubs are always 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and hence Avalon.
Sure.
So that really put me on the track for the big nightclub. And second of all, his big thing was he would hire and very creative people. He had a good eye for that, and just let them do their thing.
Right.
So those are two real. You got to manage people in different ways, and I saw how he managed, some real characters there, and that's great part of the book, and a really funny part of the book is who those characters were and how they were, how I was trying to manage them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I learned, you've got to manage people a lot differently.
And those people, I'm sure, were very hard to manage on so many different levels too. Like you'd have to manage somebody this way and another person a totally different way. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even describe. I mean, those are kind of the stories in the book, in that part of the book. The book is 3 decades long.
Wow.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Right. So that's that decade. And you'll see some, never to be repeated. And what's very, very interesting now is that period in the early 90s to mid 90s, Giuliani came in and shut everything down.
Right.
Yeah,
and,
he went hard
and
on
that
clubs.
that was considered by everyone involved, and even now sort of the heyday for New York nightlife.
It was, yeah.
But when you really think about it, that what happened didn't really go away. It just got shut down.
Right.
So then bottle service came and everything sort of transformed into something different. Changed, became more corporate. Now I'm seeing, as I'm sort of talking to people around the country for the book, everybody is definitely up for what that experience was.
Sure.
In the 90s, and an experience that we sort of took to Avalon, and I think that experience is really coming back.
So when you New York was kind of shutting down, how did you pair up with? You moved over. I want to say this in the wrong. You moved over and partnered with the Lions Group, or
yes? No. What happened was that a friend of mine was a designer, introduced me to Patrick Lyons.
Got it.
And Patrick Lyons put me over to John, because Patrick wasn't really involved in the clubs. He was doing the restaurants.
Sure.
And then we spoke, and I took a partnership with them, and then I later on, myself and John left. We were in Boston from 97 till about 2004. Mm-hmm. And then around 2002, we split off and opened up Avalon in Hollywood.
Right. So we'll go back to this. I think I started working there actually in 2004, I think, when Ray Montgomery was there. And
right.
Yeah.
Ray was my manager at the tunnel. So I brought Ray in. Wow. And then in 2004, I was already out of there in LA. Right.
And Ray was taking over the kind of that whole street, Avalon and Access. Correct. And over there.
Yeah. So, sort of managing the street. Yeah.
So let's talk about, I think in Boston, there was the, one larger club or two larger clubs, but nothing in 97 like Avalon. And I think the vision of Avalon was different from the other clubs in the city where they started bringing talent in. And the talent wasn't, the talent was worldwide DJs.
So that's a very good question and a really interesting story.
Sure.
People are interested by it. When I was in Boston, everything was being shut down. I was in New York, I went to Boston, and what had happened at that time in New York at Twilo, that's when Sasha Indigweed and Carl Cox just started residencies. Mm-hmm. So they were the first guys there that if you want to call it UK or international DJs, they were the first guys in New York at Twilo that sort of started that. I saw that and I said, man, this is where things are going. So when I came to Boston, I said, this is what we got to do. This is where it's going. I got very lucky. That may never have worked because Twilo was sort of the stop and Avalon wasn't. So Avalon really got put on the map on DJs because Giuliani then went and shut Twilo down. So now when they came to the East Coast, they had no club to go to.
Wow.
So at the time, they were looking for gigs, and we got in those gigs, and then they loved the club and blah, blah, blah. So then it sort of started from there. But if Giuliani had never shut down Twilo, I'm not sure on a DJ tip if Avalon. So people always hate Giuliani. I thank him because he may have launched my career.
Yeah, it's funny how the universe works like that. Like without those moments, it's timing. It's timing, man. I used to be the bottle guy at Twilo. That's how long I've been. My first job in New York City was picking up people's drinks and bottles.
That's great. Is there any truth to this story now that we talked about the Club USA one?
No. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I never got to experience Club USA though, but I've seen the pictures, and we also had a photographer.
We had Steve Eichner on here who used to take pictures. Yeah, who was a photographer there.
Looked like it was just crazy.
There was
I know Steve Eichner very well.
Yeah, we had him on the show. He had a great book come out, photography book. He had some great stories as well.
Yep.
Now there was a time on Lansdowne Street. And you have to know, for people that don't know Lansdowne Street, there was basically 6 to 8. The whole street was just nightlife.
Now, this is by Fenway, right?
Correct. This is by Fenway Park. There was a
six clubs.
Wow.
and we'll get into this in a minute about
Connected. Connected.
Oh, like where House of Blues is, that strip right there?
Yeah,
okay. I'm from New York, so I'm not too familiar with Lansdowne Street. I'm sorry. So
is this true that the power went out on Lansdowne Street when Paul Van Dyke was going to DJ and somehow you got the lights turned on?
Somehow we did get the lights turned on?
Somehow that you got the lights turned on the street. There's a whole thing that Paul Van Dyke was supposed to DJ and the whole thing.
Well, I'll put it this way. The lights went out. We got the lights back on. I'll take all the credit for it, but I don't take the credit.
How soon from opening the doors was the power out? Or was it like during the day?
I think it was out, and as people were coming in, they were coming in into the dark.
Oh wow.
But so we had the good thing for us is we had people had been on Lansdowne because Lansdowne has been there forever.
Sure.
So we had off-duty police, and we had people that could help and make let's say pull strings and get to get people down there quicker than most people. So that was really that was one of those times that was really a benefit.
Yeah.
But like I said, if it wasn't for me, that would have never happened.
So now we'll talk about this now, because I think this, when you say what Peter Gation said about how larger is, if you're successful, larger is better. You not only had Avalon, how many people? 2,000?
Yeah.
Okay. So you took, I believe it was Friday night, and said, well, let's not open just Avalon. Let's open 5 others and connect them and call it Avalanche.
Holy shit.
So you would have a room that would be playing 80s music. You would have a room like Axis was more, you can correct me on this, more underground kind of DJ. And then you would have Tiesto in the main room. And then you'd have, I think it was a Modern Embassy, and you'd have all different clubs. So you could walk around and experience.
That's what.
Different rooms.
To put 6 spaces together, you got to have 6 different crowds. And talk about timing and luck again. At that time in Boston, there was this big thing where all the Middle Eastern and stuff, foreign students were coming there, right? So we were able to create one club as just sort of a quote unquote Euro club, say like a club in Italy, and they just loved it. So and that just happened because the university 2 or 3 years before that had started this program, basically where rich foreign students could apply and get accepted with different,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Different application, as long as they had money. So, and you put all, and that I learned that from Peter Gation. That was a rip off of the Tunnel.
Wow.
Because what I learned is a great big nightclub is a combination of 10 different crowds coming at one time, meshing and moving around.
Yeah. I think that's where we lack in nightlife right now. I think you go to a nightclub nowadays and you have one experience and one experience only. When I used to go to the Limelight, I would go to the main room, and then I'd go to the bathroom. There's a DJ there, and then there was the room in the back that was called the Scorpion or something. What was it called? It was something. But there's 6 different DJs within one room, and you could just feel different stuff. Shampoo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think that's where what we lack in today's nightlife experience.
I can't even believe you're saying that, because I've heard that from hundreds and hundreds of people, and it goes back to my initial comment. Yeah. That experience is what
it's getting boring.
Is coming back. That is coming back in a big way.
Now, Avalanche is turning. It's gonna be the 25th anniversary.
25th, yeah.
Yeah. They are now Avalanche.
I've been doing it since I've been 15, if you can believe it or not.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I know that they were doing an Avalanche kind of.
I'm not that young.
With Tom Mello, I think is doing one at the House of Blues. There's a kind of reunion of all the people from back then. Now,
that is. No, let me be clear. That is the real Avalanche 25th reunion.
Wow. Okay, it is.
It's more than a reunion. It is everything. Danny Tenegula, decor, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
Danny, that's amazing.
I believe it's June 17th. I'll double check on that.
The invite comes out on Tuesday. Yeah, you'll see. It's certainly not Tom trying to pull something together. It's the real deal.
Tom Mello, I've known for many years as well, and he's a great.
He says hello. Yeah. He says hello and a lot of great things about you, and asked why isn't Jeff involved in Avalanche 25?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question.
I don't know.
I will be there 100%. I will be there. Actually, will you be there?
I'll be there.
Oh,
yeah,
amazing.
I got my whole book. It's part of my book tour.
Okay, great.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Jason and I will be there.
We will definitely be there to support for sure, and it's just amazing to have that experience come back after all these years too. So congratulations.
Yeah, that's what's it? I think if it is the 17th or around that date, it's actually 2 weeks after your book comes out, which would be great.
That's right. 10 days.
10 days. So, in terms of the Avalanche,
what a coincidence! What a coincidence!
Timing is everything, man.
Oh man, I didn't have to rely on Giuliani for that one.
No. So the other Avalanche that you opened up, where was the second one and then the third one? So was it New York?
One was Hollywood, which is still running.
Sure.
After I think it's been there now for 2002. So do the math on that.
Were you weren't ever able to replicate Avalanche out there, right? That just ran as Avalanche.
No,
because there wasn't.
No. We had Avalanche. No, Avalanche ran around the world. It ran in New York. It ran in LA. It ran in Singapore.
Wow,
beautiful.
Avalanche altogether has run. I think there's been 1,700, almost 1,800 editions of Avalanche around the world.
Wow. Now, when you took over the limelight and it became Avalon again, how was it run differently from when you were, obviously Giuliani was out of there, Giuliani was probably out of office, but how was I think the scene different? Because obviously there was
the scene was different.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a good question. So that was, you're talking about leaving there in about 1996 and then coming back there 10 years later. So 10 years later, sort of electronic music had sort of picked up in trance. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of DJ bookings, but we still had multiple rooms. But mainly the DJs were, we probably did that kind of stuff 2 or 3. But it's a lot different than the experience is today.
Sure.
What people consider EDM, an EDM show and an EDM night was a lot different back then than it is now.
Right. Sure. Now, when you opened up the Avalon, New York, was there bottle service then?
There was bottle service, yeah.
So that was, obviously there was never that at Limelight or anything like that. So that had to be different.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Avalanche and Limelight, there was only Ecstasy Punch. That was it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We've read about that a few times.
Yep.
That's it. No, I guess that's bottle service. If something like that.
Something like that. Sure.
Something like that.
Communal. It's communal.
It is. Now Now, your take on bottle service, do you think, and we talk about this a lot, how it changed
nightlife and
the landscape of nightlife? Now,
the experience too. It changed the experience, I think, because people everything.
And I write about that a lot in the book, and that is, you got to go through what would actually happen, right? The big nightclubs go down.
Yep.
So people are saying, "What's next?" And in the big nightclubs, the VIP rooms were big, right?
Yeah.
Because, they developed VIP rooms. And so that was a big deal. So somebody said, let's take this VIP room and put it into a club, right? And let's make everybody feel really, really important. But you got to pay for that experience.
Right.
Yes.
And by the way, not necessarily the core people, but the second and third sort of generation into the door has to pay $1,000 to sit down or for a bottle, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So that's what sort of went. And, in the beginning, it was just you can have a bottle and serve yourself. It was great. But quickly that got sort of bastardized by club owners sort of as an exploitive thing. And as you said, sort of changed the whole landscape.
I remember this place in Brooklyn, Output, that it was the same people that owned the other place in Cielo, I think, in Manhattan. They moved to Brooklyn, and this was at the height of the bottle service industry, and they had no VIP areas or no bottle service at all. Yeah. And it did pretty well. It gave people a different
Cielo
experience.
Was there forever.
Yeah.
Great point. Cielo was when Twilo closed, Cielo was the dance club for, dancing, a parent club for years. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit smaller. So, that's why maybe DJs would be going to Avalon in Boston rather than Cielo in New York, because our capacity was
a little bit larger,
twice the size, right?
Mm-hmm. So going back and changing the landscape and things like that, and I remember going to Avalon, and it was just massive dance floor, decor, everything like that. But the DJ would be above and behind you, depending on where you looked, I guess. But the DJ wasn't the focal point. Neither.
We're always in closets. Yeah.
And bottle service was, off to the side, and it was, its own little section, but it was off to the side. So we're talking about the landscape of nightlife changing, and bottle service was one of them. And we're just describing how the DJ placement, I believe, was another, kind of groundbreaking way to change the landscape. And I don't know for the better or for worse, and I want to hear your opinion on how you think more people just stare at the DJ,
right?
Or back
film
then,
it,
or film it. Yeah. Well, cameras are different.
I'll give you guys the best scoop ever.
Sure.
I'll ask you a question. Why do you think the DJ booth got moved from where it was, like sort of part of the experience, right?
Yeah.
When you were David Morales and Frankie Knuckles and Danny, and I don't know if you remember Danny Tenaglia, he would literally play in the dark.
Yeah.
And then shine a giant white spotlight on the crowd.
No one
even saw his face. No one even knew who he was. Why did the DJ booth get moved from there to a stage? Why?
Because they became the focal point, right?
Well, they did, but
I think I think it had to do with phones and with people sharing social media and stuff like that.
Two things.
Yeah.
See, that's why I need to read my book, and that's why you need to talk to the right guy.
June 7th.
Number one.
Yeah.
Bottle service. Bottle service. What happened was people realized that people would pay a premium to be on the stage behind the DJ. So that's originally what he went there. And the second thing was around 2003, 2004, EDM, we'll call it as it's known now, started to flail, right? There was issues. And people realized, or acts that were very smart, Oakenfold, Guetta, Tiesto, realized that, if I'm going to stay relevant, I have to turn myself into a rock act.
Right.
Well, here's another thing that I thought of too, because when I was coming up in the late 90s too, there was cover bands all the time, and that kind of went away, and now it just became DJs were the focal point instead of like the cover bands and all that stuff too.
The legendary Paul Oakenfold, this is hilarious in the book, and it's freaking legendary. He started it all by literally playing and then giving it a sort of like Jesus,
of course,
and jumping up and down. I was at a club once and someone said, I can fucking do that. Like, what's this guy doing? And everybody says, what if I jumped up and down and had an LED wall? What if I jumped up and down and have an LED wall and blah, blah, blah? What if I had a cube that could become the DJ booth?
Yeah.
Well, I also remember, and speaking of first too, and this was the first time I was at a nightclub. I don't know if it was the first time at a nightclub, but I remember the lighting kind of rigs at Avalon, and it would spray. Would it spray the CO2 out? It would spray something out.
Fog. Do they even have? I mean, no one even knows when I say that. People go fog. What are you talking about?
I remember it just coming down.
And fog machines. You have to fill them up with a whole bunch of liquid too.
So this light.
That's right.
It would kind of rotate.
You're running out of fog.
Go get the more. Go get the juice.
No, because I remember
exactly right. Yeah. Oh my God! Go get the juice. Exactly right.
It had this distinct smell to it.
It did. It was, who knows what we were inhaling back then. There's no FDA regulation on that. That's for sure.
You could smoke butts in there too.
Oh, that's right. You could smoke back then. Wow. Look, times have changed so much.
So nothing's worse than a combination of that with someone smoking a blunt, and it's not. That itself was you got to move smoking outside. That was enough. Just that.
Oh man!
Now we always talk about the EDM and stuff, and I don't know if you this at the time of the tunnel and stuff, and we talk about the how legendary that hip hop night was for many reasons. Did you ever work down the tunnel during that era? Or?
I did. I was right there. that was a self-run night,
right?
By Funkmaster Flex and Hot 97, yeah,
right.
So I really came there, but I wasn't involved in that night whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Jessica Rose, right? Was that her name?
Yeah, Rosenblum.
Rosenblum, yeah,
Rosenblum. Yeah, and that was, I mean, that was some crowd.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, we've seen.
That's where the Hip Hop Police came out of that time period, I think too.
Yeah. So that was not me. No.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. Wait. Let me take that back. It was me. I booked all the acts. I was doing all of it myself. But I don't want to take. I'm just kidding.
Now we talk in terms of the DJs and stuff like that. Was one of your jobs to book the DJs? How did your role change from going to, getting pulled from Limelight to Club USA to Avalon?
It's a great question. At Limelight, it was mainly marketing, promotions, and some operations. Mm-hmm. I didn't close the place. I didn't hire bartenders. When I got to Avalon, originally in Boston, it was more of the same. Right. And then I got sort of more when we renovated all those clubs on lands, and I got more into the design of that and operations. So by the time I went to LA and, became the principal owner, I was doing everything, operations.
Sure.
So at that point in time, I had a booker and a huge staff. And that was, so since 2002, it was the last time I actually booked a DJ myself. But like when we booked Danny for Avalanche 25, I mean, I know these people. So I talk to them on the phone and, and they're like, oh, how you doing? And, so that helps over the years. You build relationships.
Absolutely. No, I think that's
a key component for sure.
Everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to go, where they know they're going to be taken care of. See, that's like Cheers, the big Cheers.
Right.
I think that's, I have longevity in my career because I treat my clients well, and I just curate these relationships and carry them throughout the year. Sure, you don't want these people thinking they're just booking some guy to come in and DJ. They want to book their friend to DJ and make an experience out of it for sure.
Absolutely. Now, out of all the Avalons, do you have a favorite?
Good question.
I had to say Avalon in Hollywood because it was the first club I owned outright and built from scratch and found. And, when I came to Lansdowne was here, and we sort of renovated, and I sort of joined a group.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was a really good experience. I think that launched my career as a club owner by going through that experience in LA. And I don't know if you know LA in that period of time, but there was nothing there. Like people thought we were crazy going into Hollywood and a big club. There's never been a big club before Avalon Hollywood.
I remember it opening, and I remember that discussion going around because LA was hard. Just there's no nightlife like that out there at all.
Exactly. People go, who are these idiots? I said, oh, well,
we'll see.
We'll wait and see.
Opening night, Avalon on the West Coast. A celeb story that's not in the book. What happened on that opening night?
A celeb story that's not in the book on opening night. I would say that a lot of people call and are wanting to get on the guest list and come to opening night, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't know who's going to show up or not show up.
Sure.
So since I was in New York, I would get a call once in a while from not Prince, but quote unquote Prince's guy.
Right.
Oh, the purple one is on his way. I know what it was. He was like indecipherable glyph. Remember that symbol?
Yeah.
His name.
Right,
yeah.
That was his. Yep. That was his name at the time. So he didn't even have a name. And they said, "Oh, I don't even know what they called him, glyph or whatever the guy was saying. He's coming." I'm like, "Wait a minute." And this would go to the publicist, and the publicist would call me and say, "What should I do?" I said, "Well, what are you going to do? You gotta see what's going to happen." What the trick in Hollywood is, I'm bringing Leonardo DiCaprio, and then you show up. And your Leonardo DiCaprio is 5 without him, and then you sort of take his table and work your way into the VIP room.
Right.
I'm like, okay, this is a big scam. So the night's going on. It's in the book, a crazy thing. We don't have carpet. We don't have liquor. The same thing. I'm running around. I get a call, and it's like Prince's guys here, right? And I'm like, okay, I've had it with this shit, right? 20 other people that we're supposed to bring, what's Christina Aguilera, sure, and yada, yada, yada. A lot showed up, but a lot didn't. So I sort of run out there and I see the guy and the guy's sort of waving, and I'm like, and the guy at the door is pointing to me. So I sort of run toward the guy. I'm going to get in his face, and I sort of trip, and I like sort of stumble over the ropes, and the guy moves, and I almost pancake Prince, who was standing right behind me.
No way!
That's amazing.
Oh, that's amazing.
I almost knocked him over.
He was tiny, right?
He knew me from New York, and he's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?"
Yeah, that's amazing.
And to end the story, during that night, we were gluing down the carpet, and my shoes got stuck. So I was walking around the whole night without shoes on because they got stuck in the glue of the carpet.
Wow.
So as Prince was walking in, he's looking back at me. He's the only one looking back at me and going, "What the fuck is wrong with this guy? He's running around with no shoes, trying to knock me over."
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's great.
And I'm sure there are many, many, many more stories in the book that's coming out June 7th.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So, well, we really, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yes, thank you so
We're
much.
so excited about the book.
Great.
So excited about the book coming out. And we're also excited about 25 years of Avalanche.
Yep.
And we just can't thank you enough for coming on. So
thank you. Thanks for doing this kind of stuff. It's good for the whole dance community. So appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you.
It's our culture that we love very much and hold deeply to our hearts.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Great interview.
Jeff, you knocked it out of the box with that one. Great job, Jeff.
A little technical difficulties here and there,
Yeah,
but
guys.
we waved through them.
Yeah, Jeff's such a professional. He kept his composure the entire time.
Yeah, right. I flipped like 10 mics.
That was good, Jeff. You did a really great job with that interview. You were like super prepared, man. I thought you did awesome.
I like to be prepared on these interviews. I especially like to be prepared about things that I enjoy. And besides your company and Hurley's company, I enjoy the podcast. I enjoy talking about this stuff.
It's amazing.
It's reminiscing
it's
about
a culture, and it's something that needs to be documented for sure.
Absolutely.
As Steve said in the interview, every person in this world has a nightlife story.
I do. So, I have a few. Check out Storytime with Uncle Jeff.
Storytime with Uncle Jeff.
Well, once again, thanks for joining. I'm the promoter. He's the DJ.
Gather around, kids.
Are you playing a little story time? I've had my story times.
He did. He takes advantage of it.
Yeah, so once again, I'm the promoter. He's the DJ. You can follow Jason at
Jason Smith Music.
You can follow me at
Jeff London _
Yeah. Thanks again, Hurley.
Peace.
Okay, I'm reloaded.
Jeff London, DJ Jason Smith.
Here come the bang.
When the sun